Hello everyone, and welcome back to Crypto Live Leak. Today we see Bitcoin going absolutely crazy, going to the moon, skyrocketing, hit almost 19K on some exchanges today, December the 7th, and today we're going to be discussing the upcoming release of Bitcoin futures from the CME and Nasdaq, as well as potential Bitcoin ETFs on the horizon. Let's take a look. Okay everyone, so wow, Bitcoin has absolutely gone parabolic. It's exploding through the roof, and some of the main reasons behind this recent price move upwards the last week or two has been the CME getting clearance to list Bitcoin futures on their futures exchange. So let's take a look at some recent news that's been going around regarding these futures release. So the CME to launch Bitcoin futures, this was released on December 1st. The price has jumped since then. So the news broke last Friday, and the futures will be available for trading on December 18th. So they received clearance and they're going to list the futures. This is huge, and this is huge because it's going to add not only liquidity but legitimacy to Bitcoin itself. This is also going to allow the savvy investors and traders to short Bitcoin using the reverse futures, taking the reverse side on these futures. So that's something very important to pay attention to. This should also lead to the next steps, which would be a Bitcoin ETF. One that's already in the works has been the one from the Winklevoss twins. So another reason why this is the futures contracts are so important is because this will allow institutional investors the opportunity to get exposure into Bitcoin. Previously, before Bitcoin futures, the institutional investor had no legal way to invest in Bitcoin. There was no instrument or vehicle out there for them to invest, so now the futures are going to allow the institutional money away into Bitcoin. So this will allow traders to get exposed to this volatility that we've all been enjoying for the past year or so. And trust me, traders love volatility. So of course, the CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, all of the futures are listed on the CME. So how will the futures trade? Let's find out. Here's the CME group, one of the largest exchange groups in the world. So futures, which allow two parties to exchange an asset at a specific price at an agreed upon date in the future, have been around since the late 19th century. So these mostly existed previously in terms of commodities such as oil, gas, gold, livestock, grain, wheat, orange juice, you name it. So there has been futures for all those commodities in existence since the 19th century, and now, of course, in the 21st century, we're adding Bitcoin to that list. The way these Bitcoin futures are going to settle is going to be cash settlement on date of expiration of the spot contract. Each contract is going to be composed of 5 Bitcoin. So to buy one contract, one futures contract, they're going to be bundled 5 Bitcoins as the underlying asset. So that's where you're going to get your price from. So 5 Bitcoins times their current price will equal the price of one Bitcoin futures contract. So each tick, which is the minimum fluctuation on the futures contract, will be $5 per Bitcoin. And remember, there's 5 Bitcoin per futures contract, so it'll be $25 ticks per futures contract. So these futures contracts can only move in ticks of $25. So Bitcoin futures will trade on the CME Clearport from 5 p.m. to 4 p.m. Sunday through Friday. The long trading hours are typical of futures contracts that are traded electronically. So this almost seems like a 24-hour market to me here. We have a 23-hour per day window for 6 days a week. And also here, they limit the amount of position that a trader can take one singular entity. There's a spot position limit of 1,000 contracts per entity, per person. So this would be a maximum of 5,000 Bitcoins per position. So the way some of these big banks can get around that is they have subsidiaries or different entities owned within their control that they would be able to accumulate a massive position here if they decided to take that route. Bitcoin futures will have a price limit of 20% above or below the prior settlement price in a day's movement. So you're only going to be able to benefit 20% swing up or lose a 20% swing down on these futures in a singular day. There's going to be restrictions on that. So that actually does help with some of the volatility. As we've been following Bitcoin, we know that there can be 20% falls within a day, and it's quite common for that to occur. So the price settlement will be based on the Bitcoin reference rate, or daily reference rate of a US dollar price of a Bitcoin as of 4 p.m. London time. So this is going to be the time where they take a snapshot of the price of Bitcoin and use that price to settle the contracts for that day. So secondary, we also have Nasdaq planning to introduce Bitcoin futures, and it looks like this is going to be Q2 of 2018, as early as Q2 of 2018, so March, April 2018. So this will be the third major U.S. index. I believe the CBOE will be the second, and the CME being the first to list these. So let's just pop back over to this video and see what...
But the market capitalization of this asset is $167 billion.
Yep.
That already exceeds 95% of the S&P 500 index members. This is real. This is here to stay. If it's on the BBC at 3:30 in the morning as a top news item, I really do get worried.
Okay, so that's BBC Bloomberg right there. They have obviously agreed that Bitcoin is here to stay. Bitcoin is real. They've stopped calling it a fraud. So now, again, the legitimacy added to Bitcoin from being listed on the CME futures market is already starting to pay dividend for us. So let's hop on over to some more discussion about Bitcoin ETFs, which would be the next logical step. So ETFs are traded with ease and provide a lot of liquidity. The Winklevoss twins actually are one of the leaders in this push for approval from the SEC for a Bitcoin ETF. They have an ETF called Coin, which is something I actually almost worked with back about a year ago. Was in a financial institution, and I came across our desks that the Winklevoss twins might be a client of ours if the Bitcoin ETF was ever approved. So that's actually what really piqued my interest in Bitcoin at the time and forced me to look further into it and then make my investment myself after researching deeper into the core technology. So let's take a little listen to this professor here and what she has to say on some of the upcoming Bitcoin ETF benefits.
This digital currency. Now, there were 3 Bitcoin ETF filings earlier this year,
Yes.
including one by Winklevoss twins, and they were rejected because SEC mainly said that the cryptocurrency is unregulated. They are reviewing the Winklevoss Bitcoin application again, and 3-4 ETF sponsors also filed ETF applications.
Okay, so we have the SEC reviewing the Winklevoss Bitcoin ETF, and they are re-reviewing that, so that could be approved sometime upcoming here once they make the decision. There's also 3 or 4 other Bitcoin ETFs also in that SEC approval process. So there is one small news article that popped up today, again today being December 7th, that gives us a little bit something to worry about here. So Wall Street banks push back on launch of Bitcoin futures. So this is actually some bad news for everyone that's long Bitcoin, because the recent run is due to the prospect of Bitcoin futures being listed. But in this article here, it says other banks are pleading with the regulatory bodies to re-review the acceptance and approval for these Bitcoin futures. Some of these banks are Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and Citigroup. They're lobbying to the CFTC, saying that the CME did not allow for proper public transparency and input for this Bitcoin future regulatory review. So it looks like they want more time to pass here. They want a re-review, and they want probably just to drag this along a little further so they can advance their own interest in this currency. So this is something definitely to keep an eye on. If there is any holdup on the Bitcoin futures that have already been announced on December 18th at the CME, then I could definitely see a huge pullback in Bitcoin's price. So watch out for this, especially since we've just had a huge run up on the price, going up nearly 70% in the last week, from 10,000 up to 17,000. Oh my God. If there's one piece of news that could derail us at this point, it's definitely going to be futures not being released on December 18th. So keep an eye out for this. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope this video was informative too, and you've learned a little bit more about the futures that will be coming out on December 18th with the CME. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we will see you next time.